Hi everyone, welcome to Atmail's webinar on innovation pipeline. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time today. We expect this webinar to go for around about 20 minutes or so, plus we'll have some time for some questions at the end. We really do think this is probably worth your investment because Atmail's innovation pipeline has really been well received by our customers and anyone that we've really marketed to, and they've comments such as world class have been thrown around, and so we're really quite proud of that. We're really excited to present on this topic today because it's not something we normally get to present on. We're normally presenting on our technologies and our solutions. So again, we're really excited to present about this, and thank you again for your time. The innovation process is really about taking ideas through a very rigorous process, and then for Atmail, our customers, our partners, to realize the benefit of those ideas. Probably more importantly, it's really about filtering out bad ideas and executing ideas that seemed good at one point but went sideways, and really again through that rigorous process, identifying those ideas, whether they're hitting the milestones we hope they'd hit. So Dan Viney leads the innovation team at Atmail. He's going to walk us through at a very high level the innovation process. We'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. So as we go, please submit them. There's a button in the browser there, or the application to submit them. And where we can, we'll answer them as we go. Otherwise, we'll leave them to the end. And both Dan and I will be able to address those questions. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dave. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a great turnout. So today we're going to talk to you about the importance of managing ideas and how to implement an effective idea management process within your organization. Innovation is all about creating value. So when you're innovating, you want to really clearly define how you're going to A, create value for your customers, and B, importantly, how you're going to capture a share of that value internally for yourselves. Simultaneously, you need to be able to minimize the risks associated with product innovation, and you need to minimize the costs as well as part of that process. And so today what we're going to do is break these webinar topics down that you have on screen into 3 actionable steps that you can take. And we're going to do this in an agnostic way. We're a technology company, but what we want to be able to do is provide this sort of, I suppose, insights to our process in a way that you can hopefully go and take those principles and apply them within your industry, regardless of your core business type. This quote from Eric Ries is really focusing on the importance of validation. We sort of face a unique challenge in a way today. I don't know really, if I think about what the drivers of the history are. We've had a really competitive job market. We're all sort of rapidly evolving technological change and the associated learnings that this gives us, and people are always upskilling, getting certifications and all these sorts of things. So the end result is we're surrounded by people who are really, really talented, and they can pretty much build anything. So the key question becomes, just because you can build anything, should you? So even though this quote's now 9 years old, it's just as important, if not more important today, to really focus on that process of validation as we go out there. And another way to put it, a couple of years ago, Dave and I were having a coffee with someone we know who works in the Oz industry. And their role there is to mentor startups and whoever receives some government funding and the like. But anyway, during that conversation, he made the statement that has always sort of really stuck with me. And he said, just because there's a gap in the market, it doesn't mean that there's a market in the gap. And I really love that quote. I can't overstate the importance of market research and customer validation as part of that innovation management process. So To make sure we excel at this internally and not drop the proverbial ball, we've developed this innovation pipeline. And our innovation pipeline guides us from idea conception all the way through to basically sale and beyond into a product management lifecycle. So I'd say don't worry straight away if you can't read all the different points on the screen, because what we're going to do today is break this down, zoom in, and then walk you through the different stages over the next 20 or so minutes. If you've studied innovation management, you're probably quite familiar with Cooper's stage gates. Cooper's gates govern the process from discovery to launch, and they're I guess a trademarked version of a phase gate model. The key concept is you cannot move from one stage or phase to the next until you've ticked off some key either deliverables or checkpoints that really gate your progress through to the next stage. So similarly, our pipeline governs that process from idea conception to building a business case to sale. We've also implemented a phase gate model within our program management section of the pipeline, which is really all around engineering through to ship process as well as part of that. But one of the very first things that we do when we're pushing any idea through this process is to define common terminology. It's really important when you're running any project that everyone involved in it, all your stakeholders, everyone's speaking a common language. And because what innovation means to me might mean something slightly different to you, I wanted to start today by defining what innovation is in the context of this webinar. And one of the most common issues that can occur within an organization is like a blurry understanding of the line between invention and innovation. So I thought we could start there. Essentially, an invention is the creation of a product or the introduction of a new process or service for the first time. Whereas an innovation has occurred when someone has improved upon an existing product, process or service. So without delving into the differences between types of innovation, disruptive and sustaining and those sorts of things, in a business context, to put it most simply, an innovation is a new idea successfully applied. And the key bit here is the successful application. So to be clear, what I'm saying is the application of that idea must create value. So the questions become, how do you know which ideas will create value? How do you know which of these value creations you should prioritize? And how do you measure success? And really that's the crux of the webinar. If you don't have an innovation strategy, then this is really the starting point. It's important because your organization's capacity for innovation stems from your strategy and its supporting processes, because these provide a structure around how you search for problems to solve and the types of potential solutions to those problems, how you and your colleagues then go and evolve those ideas into a business model and associated product designs, and importantly, how you choose which projects, I should say, could be products, to fund. And essentially this boils down into three key activities. And these are the ones I mentioned right at the outset of the webinar today. So firstly, you want to be able to connect your organization's vision with your releases. Secondly, you need a sound process that dictates that path from where ideas are conceived and captured all the way through to sale and beyond. And importantly, to have clearly defined exit points. And then finally, you need to execute and deliver against that business case. You need to realize it, and you need to be able to report against it. So to start with, we'll delve in and have a look at step one. So this is our vision at Atmail, and essentially that is to, by 2023, to be the #1 white label hosted email provider for telcos and service providers. Frankly, it's arguable that we already are, because no one else in the market can offer the product features or the functions or the stabilities that we do as a service. But like the principles of Kaizen, there's always better. We're always learning, we're always improving. And in order for us to be able to do that effectively, we have to define what we feel it means to be number one. And these are parts of those definitions. So for us, being number one means that our service is integrated, it's personalized, it's secure, it's providing an excellent user experience, that it basically is critical that the service is a profitable revenue source for the provider rather than a cost, and that it's reliable and a dream to drive for both the administrator and the end user. So what I want to do now is go and link this vision through to our releases. So in this example, I'm going to focus on the part of our vision that's around a secure email experience. So you can see here on the left column on the screen, we've got visions, goals, initiatives, product release, and ideas. On an earlier slide, we had a statement between product release and idea that was featured, and really that's about how, for us at least, some of those ideas that we have evolve into product features. They might evolve into new products, entirely new product lines, but for the purpose of this, we'll focus on it from that perspective. So to realize your vision, you need to have goals, and obviously SMART goals, in that they're specific and measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, and then define strategic initiatives that help you realize those goals. So in this case, in order to deliver a secure email experience, we want to mitigate account compromise. To do this, we'll plan multiple initiatives, but one of which might be to add new functionalities or features to our 2FA offering. And then we'll target one or more target releases in order for us to realize this initiative. And then what we can do is align validated and relevant ideas with that piece of work and start all of our associated sprint planning. At this point, what we know is that every development cycle we spin against these ideas is strategically aligned with reaching our company vision. And I should also note that our roadmaps are completely customer driven. So if our proposed timelines don't suit our customers, then we can work with them to identify ways that we can either accelerate delivery or otherwise. Sorry, just getting that off. One of the ways we might do that, is to deprioritize existing feature requests or fund a dedicated project. So now that we're in this position, what we've done is we've implemented a framework where we've linked our ideas to our releases, which is the step one of the process. So now we're going to look at step two. Okay, so that is developing a sound process. So step two is really around identifying that pathway that goes from idea to business case to sale, with clearly defined exit points along the way. Now, as I mentioned before, the exit points are really, really important because they provide opportunities to stop what you're doing and stop progressing one of those ideas if they're not proving successful as early as possible. Okay, so let's break this pipeline down. Firstly, ideas. So ideas come from everywhere. They come from your colleagues, your customers, your competitors, new technology and devices that come into the market changes, things that you've thought about in the shower. They all matter, and you really should capture everything. Ideas can be really, really big, or they can be small. But regardless, exploring an idea takes time, it takes resources, and this obviously comes at a cost. So you really need to very honestly and very directly address the question, will your idea solve a real problem for a customer? And can you build a sustainable business model around it? And this is fundamental to having a fruitful innovation culture within your organization. It doesn't matter if you're big corporate or if you're working with entrepreneurs and investors. The steady hands on the steering wheels are risk averse, which without the right processes will stifle innovation internally. So implementing an effective idea management process allows you to quickly identify which of these ideas you should invest in and which you should park in order to minimize those risks and costs associated with innovation. So there's an old adage in business that you cannot manage what you don't measure. And the same is very true for ideas. So at this stage of the process, you've captured all of these great ideas and you now need to start assessing them for fatal flaws and strategic fit. Now, at the same time here, you can begin some light processes that start looking at validation, your capacity to deliver, and any other priorities that your teams will need to juggle simultaneously. I say light processes here, or a light analysis here, because we're really going to develop that further in the business case. But it's really time to be quite ruthless, because you can't put every idea that you receive through the pipeline. Having said that, you still need to foster this sort of culture that's open and encourages everyone around you to feel safe and share the ideas that they've had. But that doesn't mean that every idea needs to go through the entire process. You really do need to chop as many that aren't a good fit out as possible in the early stages. So you might be wondering at this point, what's a fatal flaw? And if you've jumped off to Google it behind the scenes, you'll probably not find much of help. I think the first thing that comes up is something about a literary technique for character development. So what we're saying with a fatal flaw is that you need to think about the idea and really assess it against the market, against the numbers, against the potential competitive advantage, and ask the question, is it viable? So, for example, we're in a world of a brand new world of data retention and privacy laws and the like. So if you were to implement your idea, would it require a legislation change to actually be successful in some regions? Or, are you boldly sailing into the headwinds of today? Like, would you launch an on-prem software solution in the time of the cloud? Or would you buy a blockbuster franchise in the age of streaming? So there are unmissable fatal flaws, and there are also subtle flaws. But it's important to ask, can we do this? Do we have, or do we know the right people in order to progress this idea? And frankly, this assessment can often be done really quite quickly and vastly reduce the number of big ideas that progress into a business case. So the business case is really what drives an investment decision. Therefore, it's a very key step in the process. And a poorly detailed business case will really cripple your idea before it can even get out of the gates. Conversely, the most detailed business case that's been built upon a really astute market analysis just won't be realised if your cash flow models are wildly optimistic or if they're uninformed. So here are some, I guess, important takeaways. You really need to understand the market opportunity and what is the problem? What are the associated requirements within the market and the product in order to be able to solve that problem? You need to be able to consider, if you didn't pursue the specific idea that's driving the business case, what other ways could you solve that problem? There's going to be lots of options, but always one of them is to do nothing. And you should seriously consider why you should or should not act. You want to know what are the risks, what are the costs, what are the benefits? You need to deep dive your strategic fit, and look at your team's capacity to deliver, and where that sits in the grand scheme of all the priorities of everything that everyone is working on. And of course, when it's looking at things like estimations and those sorts of things, when you're talking about resourcing, then work with your colleagues to ensure they've provided all the different relevant level of effort estimations as part of that process, because not only does that give them an opportunity to buy into this business case and learn more about it, and not get a surprise if it gets approved later with a whole new project or something, but also it gives you the best chance of having you know, a realistic level of effort estimation in there, rather than something that you know, you might have a history and have a good crack at it, but getting everyone involved will give you the most accurate outcome as part of that. You need to also identify ways to fund the project, and of course, work with your customer contacts in your team in the field to validate that idea with your customers, and you know, whether or not you can build a viable business model around it. So when you've completed your business case and it's approved, we've found that a proof of concept or a POC can really further drive that keep going or stop decision, because things will come out of a POC that didn't show up when you were doing your research in your business case, and bringing all of that together. So again, this is why we've got a part here, which is always about perpetually updating that business case. The more things you learn and the more inputs you get, keep updating it, because you know, we're going to come up towards an investment decision very shortly. Within Atmail, we have innovation engineers that work with me to help develop POCs to the point of productization, before we then go and work with our engineering and operations teams to finalize, productize, and deploy that. So when you reach that investment decision point, you're faced with a go or no go decision. So if you can choose to invest in the idea, then we can move into our phase gates and engineering cycles underneath the control of program management. But if you decide not to invest, I just strongly advise not to discard the idea, because at this stage, you've determined that it's a strategic fit. It doesn't have fatal flaws. You've written a business case which has been approved. So instead, park it for a periodic review for the future. Some other factor has blocked the progression at this point. And often it can be simply something like the timing isn't right to proceed. So save everything you've done, and park it until the time is right. But if you do invest, then it's continually assess every step of the process as you go along. Terms like fail fast have almost become cliched in today's tech world, but the underlying concept really does hold true. And that is, don't stubbornly stick to an idea all the way out to shipping it if it isn't meeting your projections or your milestones as you go. And this is exactly why we've got regular exit points throughout the pipeline. If you should meet those targets, then and all the predefined sort of checkpoints along the journey, then the idea will move out of innovation and it will move into a traditional product management lifecycle for us. And that brings us to the easy bit. Step 3, execute and deliver. This step is just all about following your internal processes to execute, track and report against those agreed requirements and timelines that you outlined in the business case. For Atmail, like I mentioned earlier, this is a combination of that phase gate model and sprint planning. And the reality is that's another webinar all to itself. So to recap, how many companies have you seen go from idea to execution without analyzing the why? Innovation management is really all about understanding the market and understanding and validating the value that your innovations or those ideas that you're working with will create. So for example, will it solve a problem for your customers? Will they pay for it? or will the idea result in a business optimization and an associated cost saving? And we defined 3 steps to take to be able to implement an effective idea management process within your organization. And those are to firstly connect your organization's vision with your releases, develop a sound process that takes you from idea creation and capture or conception all the way through to a business case, through to sale with clearly defined exit points along the journey, and then finally to execute and deliver. And I'd like to thank you guys for joining Dave and I today on the webinar, and we're available for any questions now that you might have.
Look, I appreciate your time running through that, Dan, and I'm certainly sure that everyone else on the call does as well. We've had a couple of questions come through, which we can quickly address now. The first one is, at a practical level, who in the organisation is able to submit ideas, and how do you actually capture them?
Everyone, actually, at a purely practical level. So we're capturing our ideas. We've got a really active team, so we get lots of ideas generated internally, but we also get new ideas from our customers, our existing customers. We get ideas from customers who want to come and join us in our hosted solution in the cloud as well. And obviously, you know, there are other things that drive the ideas, but from a submission process, basically our customers, our prospective customers and our internal team are all regularly submitting ideas through to us. I think the second part of that question was how we actually capture them. And that is, we've used a piece of software called AHA. I did a lot of searching on the market, and there's a lot of pieces of software out there with wildly varied price points. Was really impressed with this particular one. But what it gives us is essentially an idea portal where people can log into and log ideas and vote for them. We can also link that into our other systems, into our support desk software, into our CRMs, so that when people are out in the field, or if someone's reached through to our support team to ask for something, they can very easily push a button, which sends it all into our portal. And within the portal, we can manage that. We can put ideas through different phases. So we've got phases for ideas like researching and validating, through to, you know, will not implement, or we're planning that for the future, it's scheduled, it's shipped. And from there, we can then push it out into our engineering systems for tickets for the engineers to work on in their sprints, or you know, otherwise plan roadmaps. And importantly, and the key bit is, we can constantly update the idea requester as to the progress from that portal. So we've centralized that capture, where we can then go through our process and guide things through the pipeline, and when it's appropriate, push them into the other systems for people to work on.
Yeah, and I know you and I are both being pitched at regularly by various prospective partners, and they're certainly, you know, market partners that want to try and utilise our networks to get their products into the market, and we certainly take those ideas and push them through this exact same process.
Yes, that's right.
But just on the topic, and you know, what type of another question that we got submitted. You know, obviously all ideas are of different sizes. You know, we've got big ideas and small ideas. What types of ideas have to go through the process that you actually just outlined?
It's a good question, and all of them go through some part of the process. And it's a funny thing, because there are small ideas that you might find from that step one, where you've linked your organization vision to your releases. And these might be more like sustaining innovation, small incremental improvements, those sorts of things. You might find just fall naturally, if they're a strategic fit, there's no fatal flaws, those sorts of things, they might fall strategically into your roadmap just for execution over time. Whereas bigger ideas which have more cost or risk associated with them will probably fall into that business case process and go through that.
Okay, so I think answering that question, you answered another question that was submitted, which was, do you run every idea through a business case?
Ah,
Clearly, you just answer that and say no. Some things just fall into the roadmap, or just kind of more of a to-do list in some cases, right?
yeah, in some cases, yes.
Right.
There's just something you need to do. I think Dave actually introduced me to this concept through strategy planning that we've been through of industry critical success factors. And these are a little bit different to, strategic roadmap. So there's multiple roadmaps at the end of the day. You've got a roadmap for operational work. There are things you need to do internally to keep your tech stacks upgraded and keep you moving, along the path, that just stuff you have to do to keep the lights on for business as usual. And you've got roadmaps that are more strategic, that are around things like, reaching your company vision. And then there are things like industry critical success factors, and they're just things you have to do to be relevant and there, to be able to provide a service in the market.
Okay, I think this is the last question that we've actually got, and it's quite a peculiar, not a peculiar one, it's quite a doozy. I'll have a go at answering it. The question is, how much do your employees have invested in the outcome of the innovation process? Is there any credit for when someone's idea is realised? For example, a financial stake. So from the CEO of the company perspective, I actually see this as kind of a roadmap item for our innovation pipeline. I want to see Atmail become a collection of entrepreneurs and start creating value in the market for our customers, our partners, for the company itself, and even the employee themselves. Potentially to the point where we may see that employees spin out companies from Atmail over time of their own, where Atmail is perhaps invested or seeding that company to begin with. So we're not at that point yet, but I'd love to in the next couple of years really develop it to the point that our employees, that Atmail became a fostering environment for employees to innovate and to become real entrepreneurs. All right, so I hope that was interesting for everyone. I hope that you got something to spending that half an hour or so with us today. And reach out to your Atmail contacts if you want to explore this further. We're more than happy to share this. As I said, we're excited to present this topic because it's not something we normally get to present on, which is really just exposing some of the internals of Atmail out to the wider world. So again, thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you.